Last I did last week, the thing died between changing the mic from me to the author because this thing needs battery power very quickly. So at least that's working. Thank you for coming tonight. I want to remind you the store officially closes at 8. Please make all your purchases before then, because otherwise the cashiers will go home and you shall be disappointed. This is my last event of the month, so I can actually get up in the morning tomorrow and come to work and actually leave at a reasonable hour. The bad part is I have to get up at 7 a.m., which is not my favorite thing to do. But we will host events in August. The first one that's mine is Larry Correa. If you have not met Larry, he's quite a character. He'll be here on Saturday the 5th at 6 o'clock. And we're doing Chad Stroop for his debut novel on the 13th. And then a gentleman named Spencer Elworth on the 25th. And something else. In early September, we're having Louisa Morgan, which is actually Louise Marley, so you guys should come to that. That's in September. Other than that, we'll let these guys take it away. So for Clarion West, please welcome Nisi Shaw.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for the final evening of the 2017 Clarion West Summer Reading Series. I'm a longtime member of the Clarion West Board of Directors. Actually, I was talking with someone and they figured that it was like 25 years. Wow. How did this happen? This is the 34th year of the annual Clarion West Writers Workshop. Our mission, which hopefully we're fulfilling for some of you here tonight, is to provide a world-class educational opportunity to emerging writers of speculative fiction. The chance to showcase the work of amazing instructors like Her Graciousness Pat Cadigan is a big part of that opportunity. Thank you to University Bookstore for partnering with us for these events. This series would not be possible without the generous support of the National Endowment for the Arts, Amazon.com, the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, King County for Culture, the University Bookstore, Seattle Public Library, and many individual donors, some of whom are here tonight, and I see them. We have over 200 writers participating in the Write-a-thon this year. I'm one. Who else? Yeah, see, there's over 200 people here. I encourage all of you to consider sponsoring one or more of those writers, even if you are one or more of those writers. Visit www.clarionwest.org to browse writers' profiles, read excerpts from their work, learn about their goals, and sponsor the writer or writers who you want to encourage. There's still time. There's another 3-4 days. I'm still working on my write-a-thon goals, which are ridiculous, and you can still support me and others like me. So thank you. Thank you again. Also, there is a sign-up sheet going around the room. My mom has it right now. And so you can sign up if you want to find out about ongoing Clarion West stuff. Okay. I'm not like swallowing the mic or anything.
Dragging a body or something.
Yeah. Well, I can get out of here and leave that up to somebody else. I'm going to invite Workshop Director Neil Graham and Workshop Administrator Hugh Evans to tell you more about what's going on and about my own personal 4th week instructor, Pat Cadigan.
Thank you, Nisi. As Nisi said, this is the 6th and final week of the summer's workshop. And we would now like to introduce to you the Clarion West class of 2017. Could you please stand and continue to stand as your name is announced? You're the oh-nos. Shweta Ajam.
You gotta talk into the mic, honey.
It's okay, she's not here. Shweta Ajam.
E.L. Bangs,
David Bruns.
Andrea Chapella,
Mark Gallerita.
A.T. Greenblatt,
Iori Cusano.
Joanne Limpusar,
Patrick Lofgren.
Alexandra Manglis,
Robert Minto.
Stephanie Maria Morris,
Andrea M. Polly.
Vina Jimin Prasad,
Izzy Wasserstein.
Emma Turge,
Oops, I did it backwards. Adam Shannon. I forgot you, Adam. Apologies.
Gordon White,
Okay. Clarion West Class of 2017.
We took attendance.
you may be seated. Thank you so much for making this such a wonderful year. As your instructors keep telling us, and as we've had ample opportunity to see for ourselves, you are an immensely talented class, and we look forward to reading all of the brilliant works that you're sure to publish in the next few years and throughout your careers. A+ for all of you. Pass that on.
Thank you. And now we'd like to share breaking news with you, the announcement of our 2018 workshop lineup. You are the first public people to hear this. Anyone up for the traditional drum roll? Week 1, Daniel Abraham, also known as half of the writing team, James S.A. Corey.
Last week in 99.
Week 2, Ken McLeod.
Yay!
Week 3, Yoon Ha Lee.
Yay!
Week 4, Karen Lord.
Week 5, Karen Joy Fowler.
And week 6, Ellen Datlow. Thank you. We hope you will join us here next summer to hear all of them read.
And now I have the honor and delight to introduce Pat Cadigan to you. Pat is one of my personal heroes. I first met her when she taught week 2 of my Clarion West class, 21 years ago. This is the 3rd time I've had the honor of watching her teach. She's smart, tough, honest, generous, and 100% there at the crit table. At the start of one of her previous teaching weeks, she entered the room with a t-shirt that said flat out, "Don't take this ass-kicking seriously."
Personally. Take it seriously, but not personally.
But you have to take it personally and seriously because of the smart. However, because of the honesty and generosity, it's one of the most rewarding ass-kickings you'll ever receive. I know, Pat critiqued the first short story I wrote as an adult, and I learned a hell of a lot from the experience. I may have whimpered, but damn, I took notes. Still have them. She brings the same dedication and toughness, but also the warmth to her own fiction. She's the author of 15 books, including 2 Arthur C. Clarke Award-winning novels, Sinners and Fools. Her list of short story publications is impressive and long. She's won the Locus Award 3 times and won the Hugo Award for her novelette, The Girl Thing Who Went Out for Sushi, which also won the Seiun Award in Japan. She's been called the Queen of Cyberpunk, the Queen of Modern Science Fiction, and a science fiction maverick. But if I were making a science fiction tarot pack, she'd be the Empress. The archetype,
Damn right.
guessed
Did I
right.
say that out loud?
The Empress, the archetype of female power and creativity. Please help me welcome the indomitable Pat Cadigan.
get set up here. And it's like eventually I'm going to fall down. So I'm going to drag this chair over and maybe, I don't know, knock some stuff over. No, that's okay. And then I'm going to do what my mother told me not to. And sit on the back of it here. And if the back breaks, I'll go on a diet, I swear. Tomorrow. And so I will now read to you. And I thought a lot about what I wanted to read. And I thought a lot about, readings that I've been to. And I decided that I'm going to read you 2 short things instead of one very long thing where we will then end up staying here forever because I'll make you ask me questions afterwards. So, from my collection Patterns, the title story called, oddly enough, Patterns. Pardon me while I swill something. You forgot to put in the gin. Oh well, I'll bear up somehow. I have this continuing fantasy of assassinating the president. Any president. To step forward within a crowd, raising my weapon and aiming it at the president's head. Sometimes in the movie, unreeling in my mind, my hand comes up holding a Luger Parabellum P08 with a ridiculously long 190mm barrel. Other times, I'm holding a more likely Mauser military pistol. Twice I've found myself clutching an Uzi with the stock detached. 3 or 4 times I held a .357 Smith & Wesson Magnum. And once, only once, I stared down the length of a crossbow at the chief executive. In the fantasy, I'm not angry or scared. I don't think about the fact that I'm taking a human life. The president, after all, is not so much human as manufactured, a product made flesh by the bipartisan system and the media in accidental conjugation. Is it wrong to fire the dot pattern on a television? I feel nothing beyond a mild nervousness, the slight, very slight, stage fright I used to experience during my acting days. That my stage fright was never acute enough to give me the cold sweats or send me vomiting into the candiest receptacle probably contributed to my lack of success in the theater. In a one-person show, I could have been overlooked. I know what you're thinking. I dream of assassination as a way to become visible. You're wrong. There is far more power in invisibility than there is in fame. In fact, my fantasy movie has never proceeded beyond the point at which I raise my weapon and train it on the president. The action freezes when the president's gaze rests on the instrument of his/her destruction. But I know the rest of it. I brace myself in fire. The president falls backwards, face a red ruin, body jerking in every direction. He/she is caught by aides, Secret Service agents, and lowered to the ground. The crowd is completely silent. They are neither frightened nor in shock, just passive as the dot pattern rearranges itself. I lower the weapon to my side, then turn and walk away without hurry. Nobody looks at me. I walk some unmeasured distance to a car I recognize as mine, parked at an innocuous curb. I get in, twist the key waiting in the ignition, and drive off. In the days to come, there will be no mention of what happened to the president, ever. Nor will there be any news about the government yet. With one shot, I have obliterated not just the president, but both houses of Congress, the Supreme Court, Social Security, the National Endowment for the Arts. Sorry. The government printing office, the gross national product, the FTC, the CIA, the HEW, and the Immigration and Naturalization Service, among others, as well as postponing forever the next election. But life goes on anyway. I drive an endless highway across the United States, And through the windshield, I observe the permanent status quo I have visited on the American people. They don't know what has happened. They don't find it odd that they keep living in the same homes, working the same jobs, hearing the same music on the radio, watching the same dot patterns. Like me, they travel without destination. The days melt into each other with no distinguishing characteristics. The seasons come in and go out as they were meant to in textbooks, but no one grows older. The treadmill has achieved a state of being both in motion and at rest simultaneously. Test pattern, entropy. All because I shot the president's dot pattern. Seen in close-up, the dot patterns could almost be taken for a collection of organisms, very cooperative organisms, which have discovered a choreography that will produce patterns pleasing to the eye of much larger and much less cooperative organisms. Quotation from Chairman Busby Berkeley and Miss Amy Lowell. Christ, what are patterns for? I'll tell you. The screen crackles when I put my finger on it. Static electricity, the dots warning me off their pattern. I pull my finger back and make it a pistol barrel pointing at the president, who is giving the State of the Union address. The president looks directly at me and hesitates. The dots at work on his pattern bubble and boil and show me the red ruin that could be the result of my gun hand. Then the president's head reforms, and he goes on with his speech. We are in great need of reform in this country, he says. But even so, the State of the Union in general is most hope-inspiring. Now, while there's still hope. I cover the president's face with my finger, loud crackling, followed by a close-up, which puts my finger absurdly on the president's moving mouth. He doesn't bite, but there's some mild electricity running up my arm. It was all them cop shows, his mother said. All that violence. They ought to get it off the tube. She said it on television at his televised trial. Christ, what are patterns for? First-degree murder. Always such a good kid, my mother would say. Never a moment's trouble. Helped around the house and never answered back either. Good-natured, you know. And when all the other kids were hanging out in the streets, chasing each other around, getting into trouble, my kid was studying. My kid always wanted to be somebody. How true. I could have had my own show. In fact, if the technology had been good enough in those days, I might have lived in a suburban dot pattern, walked to school to my own theme music, mount dialogue to my own laugh track, and achieved endless childhood and syndication. I could have been syndicated. I could have been a contender instead of a commercial interrupt for station identification. It is often necessary to amputate a frame or two for the sake of format. So sorry. Apparently the program director has spliced this one a little early. But since it happened anyway, you have 60 seconds to contemplate your mantra. Now how much would you pay? Late at night, the dot patterns change and rearrange. I can't sleep. 2, 3, 4 in the morning, the dots perform before my dry eyes. Slices, dices, juliennes. How much would you pay? Don't answer yet. Stainless steel never needs sharpening. Now how much would you? Don't answer yet. Act now and we'll throw in the fabulous Kalashnikov rifle, the most successful automatic rifle ever made. Gas-operated, simultaneous bolt action and cocking with a handy selector lever for single shot or automatic at a rate of 100 RPM. That's 100 RPM! Isn't that amazing? A mere 8 pounds with a folding metal stock, perfect for the murder of the head of state of your choice. Call now. Operators are standing by. I blink. When you awake, you will remember everything. I want to call friends to ask if they've just seen this too. And then I remember, all my friends are electric and living color. A famous actor has shot himself. When they found him, the television in his townhouse was still on, murmuring merrily to itself as it played one of his old movies. I see it on the 6 o'clock news. Dot pattern of a dot pattern. Now how much would you pay? I've taken to dreaming in dots, reruns. I raise my arm. I'm holding a Browning GP35. I know nothing about guns. Its rate of fire is 25 RPM with a muzzle velocity of 1,110 feet per second, and it is going to make cheap chuck of the president's face. I know nothing about guns. The dot pattern knows point-blank range is that distance at which the bullet achieves its highest velocity, the distance the president is from me now, and it's on every channel, even cable. Cable. When I awake, I remember everything. In dot patterns, in living color. A soap opera actress reports being assaulted in a restaurant by an irate woman wielding a totes umbrella, shouting, "You leave that nice lady's husband alone, you slut. Hasn't that poor woman had enough trouble without you trying to steal her man?" The actress's companions managed to pull the woman away. The rest of the people in the restaurant, diners, waiters, waitresses, busboys, maitre d', all watch. They are neither frightened nor in shock. And now, what will I do? I consult the schedule. It is not time to run all the drug dealers out of Florida. Last night, the score was even for the right thinking on the mean streets of New York. It won't have to be done again for another week. I think I will defend my title against the challenger in Las Vegas. I double up my fists and inspect the knuckles. Yes, these can go 15 rounds. Piece of Duncan Hines cake. I press my knuckles against the screen, wild crackling. The dots swarm in liquid patterns around each point of contact. Electricity is flowing up both arms, dancing through the nerves in the nerve endings, which sizzle into life and join the pattern. My hands are being taped as I hold them out. I've got to keep my fucking hands up, do I hear? Just keep my fucking hands up and let him dance himself out and then jab his motherfucking head off. The dots pulse, live from Caesar's palace. More alive than life. Fitted out with this dot pattern to where I could strike sparks in the moving, living air. Now I know it can be done. The fight goes by in a swirl of dot pattern light. I keep my fucking hands up and let him dance himself out and then jab his motherfucking head off. The fight is not important. Now I know it can be done. But I have to wait until the swelling goes down and the black eye fades. Never mind. You should see the other dot pattern. More on that story from our correspondent in Washington. Dot pattern Washington snaps under the scanning line. The White House looks a little fuzzy. So does our correspondent. I touch her microphone. The dots leap in frenzy and reshape their pattern into a 127 millimeter barrel version of the gyrojet pistol, and then back into a microphone. Not yet. Tonight, there is a press conference. Brought to you by, sponsored in part, the whole world is waiting and watching. Ladies and gentlemen, on every channel, the President of the United States. The reception has never been so good. It must be me. The dot patterns know me, and we know each other. Tropism. Wherever they appear, I turn to look, and my looking excites them. What are patterns for? I'll show you, as I show myself. The dots sparkle around my hands in the continuing fantasy show, live on every channel. I run my fingers through them like a helping of stardust and reshape the pattern. They know what I need here. The Colt Commando with telescopic butt fully extended for shoulder firing, as used by the Green Berets, who have also been on this channel. The dots remember the pattern, and here it is. I step forward in the crowd of reporters, demanding to be called on. The President's dot pattern scans the room, looking for a likely question. Then he sees me and hesitates. I have raised the Colt to my shoulder. Everyone is watching. I touch my finger to the screen. The President's head disappears in a red mist. Dot pattern's gone insane. The room is completely silent, neither frightened nor in shock. Behind the podium, the Great Seal, the curtains, the President's aides, and Secret Service agents begin to unravel from the hole where the President's head was. Embarrassed, puzzled anchorman. We're sorry for the interruption in transmission. Apparently we're having technical difficulties. We'll have more information for you after this. No, we won't. That is all the information we are ever going to have, ever. Fade to commercial. Dogs pounce on bowls of food. I sit on the couch nodding. It's all over now. It's not quite how I expected it to go, but it was, after all, adapted for television. The commercial is followed by another commercial, and then the embarrassed, puzzled anchorman. Apparently, we are permanently cut off from our hookup in the nation's capital. We will try to have some news on the rest of the press conference as soon as possible. A fast recap of statements and questions up until the moment I murdered the president's dot pattern, when things unravel like celluloid melting away, a promise of an update soon. They patched the foreshortened evening schedule with a made-for-TV movie. Time to go. I leave my apartment, go down to my car parked at an innocuous curb. The key's not waiting in the ignition, but in my pocket. Such a good kid. Never a moment's trouble. We can live in the same homes, work at the same jobs, hear the same music on the radio, watch the same dot patterns. We travel without destination. What are patterns for? Nothing anymore. There used to be too much violence on TV. Not now. I wasn't expecting it to be that crazy.
Yeah.
But I have one more for you. And this one is, that story is a little over 30 years old. So I will read you something a bit more current now, which is and it has a bit more, this one's a little more autobiographical, since I can't actually ever claim to have killed a dot pattern. This one, and I know, nothing says professional like a t-shirt with a profanity on it, right? This one is called Cancer Dancer. Weird shit happens to you when your life turns into liminal space. Actually, I thought it was a perceptual shift. When the oncologist tells you that the uterine cancer they thought was gone has come back, and you're looking at a life expectancy of maybe 2 years, the personal paradigm shift is like nothing you've ever been through before. I can't speak to anyone else's experience, but here's mine. When you have a baby, you find out what's important, and that, my friend, is the fucking secret of life. I'm sure there are other ways to get clued up about that. This is how I learned it. And I figured that this was the big one. I'd never do anything more profound than become someone's mother. It never occurred to me that big things aren't only things you do, they also happen to you. The Macmillan Cancer Center in London is a pretty nice place. They've made it look like a hotel lounge or maybe a casual reading space in a library. I've been to the Google office space, or whatever it's called, in East London, where you go work on your startup or find someone else's to work on, and the Macmillan Center is nicer than that. It would be a great place to hang out if you wished you didn't have to go there. I knew it was cancer. I'd had a brush with uterine cancer the year before, and they'd taken care of it with a hysterectomy. I'm sorry, there are lady parts mentioned in this. I should have warned the guys in the audience. I just didn't know whether this was the same or something new. I was thinking things like, will I go bald, and is there a special place to buy those I have cancer headscarves, and am I going to puke so much that I actually lose some weight, shit like that. And then the oncologist, it's okay actually if you laugh, if you think the funny, it's okay to laugh at cancer. Okay? Cancer's not funny, it's fucking hilarious. I just thought I'd let you know that. That's not part of the text. Like they couldn't know that. You know, okay. So where was I? Okay, yes. And then the oncologist, this nice lady in a tasteful wool dress, even more tastefully accessorized with a print scarf, a gold brooch, and plain black pumps with low but authoritative heels, tells me that I'm looking at 2 years. And then she adds, it could be less. My Macmillan nurse phones while I'm on my way home on the bus. She's a great my Macmillan nurse, but I tell her I'll call her back later because I don't feel like subjecting the stranger sitting nearby to my tale of woe. But after she hangs up, I consider talking aloud to the dead phone as if she were still there, just to get it out of my system. The oncologist said this, and I said that, and now I feel blah, blah, blah. So you think you're having a bad day? Cheer up, Pilgrim. It could be worse by a fuck ton. But I don't. I'm very short on luck. Now, what little I have ain't good. The phone would probably ring in the middle of my soliloquy of sorrow. I'd go from tragic heroine to the punchline of a real-life anecdote, which would probably go viral on YouTube, courtesy of someone else's cell phone. Life is ready to kill you without provocation. Why tempt fate into humiliating you before you go? My downstairs neighbor Tim was outside puttering around in the front yard when I got home. He's a nice young man, not even half my age, and half again as tall. Normally I'd stop to talk to him, but not today. I know what's going to come pouring out if I open my mouth. We do not know each other well enough for that kind of disclosure. Being a nice guy, he'd probably invite me in for a cup of tea and listen sympathetically, but I can't handle that right now. Plus, like I said, he's half my age. He'd probably think 62 is old. So I smile, try to look like I've got too much to do to stop and chat, and zip through my front door as fast as I can work the locks. The postman has come and gone, leaving me a single yellow envelope on the carpet at the foot of the stairs. 2 thick blue lines are drawn through the address, and in black marker the word deceased ? Not yet. Thank you so much, I'm sure, I tell the envelope, picking it up. There's a number written in pencil, like a serial number. It means nothing to me. In black ink, in a different hand has printed, no longer at this address, and underneath what could be a name or initials, JEP. Hey, don't assume someone died, I scold the envelope, and turn the overhead light on so I can see who this was addressed to. Detective Sergeant Michael Paris, Reddit, R-E-T apostrophe D, Reddit. The Oak House, Station Road, Fish Ponds, Bristol. One of the lines goes through the postcode, so I can't read it, but it doesn't matter. I don't know anyone in Bristol, nor do I know any cops, Reddit or otherwise. I turn the envelope over, but there's nothing except return to sender in the same blue as the lines through the address. Wrong sender, I say. I'm about to tell myself to stop talking out loud like some crazy old lady, when I notice that the envelope's been opened, cut open, and the stamp or franking removed. Geez, how blind am I wonder? Should have gone to whatchamacallit, Specsavers. Even as I'm thinking I should ask Tim if this is his, I'm emptying the contents into my hand. Fuck it, I've had a rough day. I'm in the mood for the cheap thrill of reading someone else's mail. I have no idea what I might have been expecting. A birthday card with 5 quid in it, or a love letter, or a note from Detective Sergeant Michael Paris, Reddit, asking for money. What I did get. I laid it all out on my kitchen table. There wasn't much. 2 pieces of paper, one a torn half sheet with a note. Mike, please help. Initial K, XX. Don't call me. I held the paper up to the light, but there was no watermark and no indentations indicating something written on a sheet covering it. The other piece was from a notepad. The logo in the upper right corner said 4 Pillars Hotels. Not a chain that I'd ever heard of, but there are lots of things I've never heard of. There was an elaborate doodle in the lower left-hand corner, all abstract, but whoever had done it had genuine artistic ability. I put on my reading glasses for a closer look and discovered that it wasn't completely abstract after all, and the very densest part of all those lines and squiggles and lattices was a single word: murder. The doodler had gone over each letter several times to make it stand out. Below the doodle, like the paper had been turned sideways so the doodle was at the top, Wednesday, 6 p.m., Stella, 47, 30756. The third item took me from puzzle to what the fuck. A plastic card, plain black, except for a circle printed on it in shimmery metallic silver. That's a circle, not a solid dot, about 1 inch in diameter. The other side was brick red, or maybe drying blood red, with a black magnetized strip and tiny print setting out terms and conditions, whose terms and conditions, however, had been thoroughly scratched out and blacked over. And as if that wasn't enough, someone had punched a tiny hole through the card and attached an old-fashioned property ticket with a bit of cord. On the ticket, someone had printed room 47. Below that, in smaller letters, not a hotel, belongs to the Eternity Club. The Eternity Club. I'd never heard of that either, but given what I had heard today, it definitely sounded like my kind of place. Now, London is lousy with private clubs, the most well-known being Groucho Club, named for the Marx brother who so famously proclaimed he didn't want to join any club that would have someone like him as a member. There are lots more, and all of them charge a fortune for membership, so that no one has to suffer the indignity of belonging to one that would have anyone with a bank account like mine, or yours, as a member. Most are so exclusive that civilians like me have never heard of them. That's okay. It's not like I ever think about exclusive clubs anyway. Although a friend did take me to the Groucho Club once as her guest, and if I were going to join one, I'd pick that one. They're a classy bunch. But after a doctor says you might have only 2 years to live, a place called the Eternity Club will definitely pique your interest. Not that I had any idea what it really was. The black card reminded me of that Uber American Express card, the one that's several levels above platinum, and it's so exclusive, it's just plain black, like it's the little black dress of credit cards. But this one wasn't black, blank. I looked from the note to Mike to the doodle, and then to the card with its property tag. I rearranged them on the table in front of me as if that would tell me anything. Instead of a gun, it actually did. I'd left the envelope on the table, placing the note from the hotel just below it. It showed me that no longer at this address, JEP, and Wednesday, 6 p.m., Stella 47 30756, had been printed by the same hand. Just like the tag attached to the card, except for room 47. That had been written by a different person. The same one who had put deceased ? On the front of the envelope and returned to sender on the back. This had to be some kind of joke, I told myself, a prank that when Mike Paris read it, maybe a bunch of his fellow detectives decided to punk him on his last day at work by putting together a bunch of fake clues to a fake case. Mike, please help, K, XX, don't call me. Only TV detectives get notes like that. Truth is duller than fiction, because fiction has to be entertaining. So do jokes. Ergo, this had to be a prank. But why include a card supposedly from this Eternity Club? An in-joke? Or maybe a jab at his age? Mike's so old, the only club he qualifies for is the Eternity Club. Ha ha. No, it sounded lame even just in my head. I was about to put everything back in the envelope. Instead, I found myself picking up my cell phone and dialing information. I didn't expect to get Michael Paris's number. He could have gone anywhere after retiring. Brighton, the south of France, the north of France. Paris. But surprisingly, he still had a number in Bristol. I called it, and a woman answered. I'm trying to reach a Michael Paris, I said after a moment of hesitation. He was a detective. This is his daughter, the woman said with formal cordiality. Can I help you? Is Detective Paris available? My father passed away several weeks ago, she said in a quiet, I'm tolerating you because I have manners tone. I waited for her to ask how she could help me again, but apparently she wasn't that tolerant. Not that I could blame her. I'm sorry for your loss, I said. I didn't mean to bother you at such a difficult time. Did you know my father, she asked, not quite as stiff. Oh no, I'm not a cop, or detective. Are you some other kind of associate? You mean like a snitch? I wanted to bite my tongue off as soon as I said it. No, it's nothing like that. This is going to sound kind of strange, but please bear with me. All right, she said, I'm listening. I have a piece of mail that was meant for your father. I held the envelope in my other hand. Someone tried to send it to him, and it was returned, only it went to the wrong address. I see. Did you want me to come get it? Oh, no, you can't. Oh, well, technically you could. It's not impossible, but I'm calling from London. Suddenly that changed everything. Is this you, Karen? She snapped. Don't you know when to give up? I don't know any Karen, I said. My name is... then you're stooging for Karen. I don't really care. It's over. My father's dead. Go find some other Mark. Please, Miss Paris, I'm not Karen. I don't know what you're talking about, honest. I just got this piece of mail, and it looks like it might be important. There's this black card. Sure. Send it to the Avon and Somerset cop shop, she said. Or if you're really in London, you can take it to Scotland Yard for all I care. Now, fuck off, and don't call here again. There was a click as she hung up, which seemed anticlimactic. There are whole generations who will never know the pleasure of slamming down a phone. I picked up the note to Mike, so K probably stood for Karen. Big deal. As facts went, it was pretty anemic, even knowing that she was someone who made Michael Paris's daughter very angry didn't tell me much. Hell, I didn't even know Michael Paris's daughter's name. I'd have made a lousy detective, I thought. Well, then again, maybe I could improve. I fetched my laptop from the other room. Googling Michael Paris, Bristol sans quotes, gave me a seemingly endless list of links to stories that included the words Michael, Paris, that's Paris with 2 R's, and Bristol, all listed under the question, did you mean Paris, with 1 R. Then I tried Bristol police and discovered that you can't just get a list of law enforcement officers on request, unless they're on Twitter. Then you can even see thumbnail photos, but there were no detectives among them. I followed a few, thinking I could ask them about Michael Paris in a direct message, only to find that you can't direct message anyone who isn't following you back. I kept searching, and eventually I found Michael Paris's obit. It was frustratingly short. He died 2 months ago, age 56. And would be missed by his husband, Mark Ramirez, and his brother, Arthur Paris, and that was all. No children. Cremation had been at the South Bristol Crematorium. In lieu of flowers, people could make a donation to Macmillan Cancer Support or to Ball Boys, a testicular cancer charity. Ball Boys for testicular cancer. Save the tatas for breast cancer. Uterine cancer didn't lend itself to that kind of whimsy, but then neither did rectal cancer, although it could have. They were missing an opportunity to give out ribbons saying, assholes need love too. You think a lot of crazy shit when you get cancer. I was still thinking when the phone rang, startling me, so I nearly jumped out of my skin. I looked at the screen. It was the number I'd called an hour ago. Didn't see that coming. I pressed the answer button. Hello, I said, a bit nervous. This is Michael Paris's daughter. Is this the person who called me earlier? Not a bit angry now. In fact, she was practically oozing concern. Why? I asked. I just wanted to apologize for how I spoke to you. I'm still grieving, but for my father. I still can't believe he's gone. We were very close. Yeah, I said, so close you're not even mentioned in the obituary. Long moment of silence. I could practically hear the wheels turning as she tried to think up an answer for that. My father was a complicated man. It wasn't always very easy to be his daughter. We were estranged for a long time, and then at the end of last year we finally reconnected. Uh-huh, I said. Another brief silence. When you called, I was going through some of our family things, and I was feeling very emotional. I'm afraid I took it out on you. Apology accepted, I told her. Anything else? You said you had some mail that looked important, including a black card. You said, you see, that card should have been in with my father's papers, but after you called, I checked and it's missing. You seem to have found it. Yeah, I took your advice. Pardon? I mailed it to the Bristol Police Department. You'll have to talk to them. Liar. Just like that. The growl was back in her voice. It sounds like you're getting emotional again, I said briefly. We all handle grief in our own way. Don't bother calling back to apologize. I'll forgive you now. I know you've still got it. And I chuckled. I don't know what your deal is, but it's not my circus and not my monkeys. Though it most certainly is your circus. Keep screwing around and it'll make a monkey out of you. Save yourself a hell of a lot of time and trouble and send me Mike's mail. I'll give him an address. Okay, I said. Let me get a pencil and something to write with. I put the phone down, counted to 5, and picked it up again. Go ahead. M. Paris, 89 6th Avenue. As she spoke, I typed the address into Google Maps, enlarged it, then pressed for Street View. Could you repeat that back to me so we can be sure you have it right? She was trying not to be impatient now. No, I said. Street View shows nothing on 6th Avenue except warehouses and garages. You think you're funny, she barked. We can use Google too. We've got your phone number and we know you're in London. You want the circus? Well, the circus is coming to town, and when we're through with you... I hung up, shut my phone off. Then I sat staring at the blank screen, wondering if I should take out my battery and break the SIM card in half like in the movies. No, I should turn my phone back on and call the police. Better yet, take this misdirected piece of mail to the nearest police station and make a report. I reached for the envelope and stopped. Officer, I want to report that a woman called me on the phone and threatened to take me to the circus. I burst out laughing. Talk about thinking crazy shit when you get cancer. And speaking of which, yes, officer, I was diagnosed today. 2 years, they said. Yes, I'll be having chemo, but it hasn't started yet. Scared? To be honest, I don't think it's really sunk in yet. Would I say I'm in shock? No, not exactly. Drugs? Ibuprofen and antacids. Oh, you mean drugs? That was assuming they didn't spend that much time with me. I picked up the card again. The Eternity Club, room 47. My gaze fell on the sheet from the hotel notepad. Stella, 47, Wednesday, 6 p.m. I looked at my laptop screen just to make sure. Yep, it was almost 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. Maybe this was the craziest shit I'd ever thought in my life, but I couldn't believe it was just a coincidence. Like anyone else, I can overthink things. I spent most of my adult life analyzing data for insurance companies until I took early retirement. My first brush with cancer felt like a wake-up call, time to smell the roses. I don't think I ever thought that. All told, I'd say I'm thorough, but not obsessive, usually. But today wasn't exactly usual. In my whole life, I've never had anyone threaten me on the phone, in person, whatever. Even when my son's father and I got divorced, there wasn't a whole lot of drama. Things got heated sometimes, but not to the point of circus metaphors. That thought didn't make me laugh. I grabbed the magnifying glass from the silverware drawer. Okay, where do you keep yours? And studied the black card, which was apparently at the center of this issue. The front really was featureless except for a few scratches. Fingerprints finally occurred to me, but too late to be useful, of course. I'd handled the thing too much. I really was a lousy detective. Even as I was thinking that, however, something else occurred to me. I've been living in the UK for 20 years, long enough that I have to stop and think as to whether someone has a British or North American accent. Things can become so familiar that they're completely transparent, which was why it hadn't occurred to me right away that Michael Parris's so-called daughter was from Massachusetts. I hadn't noticed because I'd grown up in Massachusetts myself. One more for the not coincidence file. The question of what to do, or if I should do anything at all, remained. Then my gaze fell on the hotel notepaper again, and I realized I'd already decided. Google, don't fail me now, I muttered, turning to the laptop. A minute later, I was fuming as I scrolled through a multitude of links for church groups and fellowships. When you're not religious yourself, it doesn't occur to you that words like eternal make some people want to pray. So should I take that as a hint? Since we were filing things under not a coincidence and I'd just been told what I'd been told. I took time to consider it and decided there was nothing even remotely liturgical about this card or the tag attached to it or the 2 pieces of paper that had come with it. All the Eternity Clubs on my laptop screen were groups of people. The Eternity Club had rooms, at least 47, maybe more. Yahoo gave me the same results, so did the others. Disappointed, I went to my homepage just to have something other than a list of prayer groups in front of me. I smiled at the cute animals of the day, but I didn't feel it. Maybe if I changed the background to a lighter color, I thought, it might lift my spirits. But as I was about to move the cursor, I saw something I'd used more times than I could count. I clicked on the box under Search for Things to Do in London Today, Tonight, and typed The Eternity Club. The image that appeared on my screen didn't last even 5 seconds before it flipped to 404, page not found. But that was okay. It lasted long enough for me to see the address was in Soho. Not surprising, most private clubs were. I slipped my laptop and, after a moment's thought, the power lead into a shoulder bag and made sure all the windows were locked before I left the house. Tim was still puttering around in the front yard. I considered asking him to let me know if any angry strangers came around asking for me, and then decided against it. I'd have to come up with a reason, and I don't like telling stupid lies. Worse, the truth sounded like a stupid lie. So I just tried to look busy as I hurried off to the bus stop. But since there wasn't really any hurry, I took the number 29 bus southbound towards central London. Depending on the time of day, it can take anywhere between 40 minutes to something over an hour to get from my neighborhood to the edge of Soho. I sat on the upper level and stared out the window at nothing in particular. And then for no reason at all, I remembered I hadn't called my Macmillan nurse back. I fished my phone out of my pocket and turned it back on. As soon as I did, it rang, and it was that number. Reject? No, Michael Parrish's fake daughter had probably left a dozen messages on my voicemail. Maybe I could get rid of her once and for all. What? I said, trying to sound both bored and badass. Look, you're holding property that just doesn't belong to you, she said, doing her best impression of reasonable. Suppose I had something that belonged to you. Wouldn't you want to get it back? I don't know that I've got anything that belongs to you, I said. I don't even know your name. Your real name, I added as she started to say something. It's Michaela. My friends call me Mike. I got a very slight hesitation between the first two words. Maybe that meant nothing, or maybe she had to stop and think of something that would go with the nickname Mike. Nice try, I said, and hung up. Immediately, I dialed my Macmillan nurse. Naturally, I got her voicemail. I left a message. The moment I hung up, the phone rang again. What's the matter with you? She demanded before I could even say hello. That card means nothing to you. You can't use it for anything. But you can, I said. She stumbled and stuttered. Tell me what it's for and I'll consider mailing it to you, I said. It's private, she said. I can't divulge that information. It's not. Okay, let's try something easier, I said. Who's Karen? Why are you being such an asshole? She demanded. I hung up, not because I was offended, but because it was a good question and I didn't have an answer. I turned my phone off so I could think undisturbed. Why was I being such an asshole? It didn't take very long for the answer to come to me. Cancer, of course. This was a weird little episode in which I had randomly acquired some measure of control, and it was completely unrelated to cancer or my suddenly foreshortened lifespan. Okay, I was taking my problems out on someone else. But it served her right. She was lying about who she was to get her hands on the late Michael Parrish's mail. And let's not forget, she threatened me with a circus. Still, she could have offered me a reward instead, £100, even just 50, and I'd have sent the goddamn envelope to her by overnight mail. Well, after I found out what the Eternity Club was, and that would depend on what it was. I found a table in a cafe near a power outlet and plugged in my laptop. I could enjoy free electricity along with the free Wi-Fi, but it was hard to concentrate. I kept double-checking the Eternity Club's address on Google Maps, and then worrying that I might have misread it. I was tempted to go there now just to make sure, and then return at 6, but I told myself to wait. It wasn't just that it seemed like the right thing to do. It was all I could do not to put my head down on the table and nap. Part of it was cancer fatigue. The fucker tires you out. But another part was the drama that I'd stepped in with this strange woman. I made a mental note to get a new cell phone number. Meanwhile, I was in a coffee shop. If I was tired, I could caffeinate myself. By the time I packed up and headed out into the heart of Soho, I couldn't have slept on a dare. I left my cell phone off. The thing about London is, it has no grid. Streets wind and wander. You can start out thinking you're going one place and end up somewhere completely different with no idea how to get back. It's part of London's charm. And it can drive visitors crazy, particularly those from the US. After 20 years, I was used to it. I still got lost and just didn't stress about it. I thought for sure I'd get lost looking for the Eternity Club. It was in a nookish cranny called a close, C-L-O-S-E. Close as in close by, not close the door. The kind of place you could walk past dozens of times and never notice. But I went right to it as if I'd been there 1,000 times. The outside of the building was painted dark brown with equally dark windows, too high up for me to try peeking through. No street number, no doorbell, not so much as a discreet members only sign. Just a door with an old-fashioned lever-type hand grip instead of a knob, also painted dark brown. I tried the door. It wasn't locked. The reception area decor was also done in shades of brown. It was softly lit by wall sconces. Pleasant, but I was going to need my reading glasses if I wanted to see anything. "Oh," said a voice. I blinked and realized I was in front of a reception counter. The young guy behind it looked surprised for a moment, then quickly covered it with a professionally warm smile. I thought he must have been standing on something because the surface was about 6 inches too high for me to lean on comfortably. "Welcome to the Eternity Club." I'd expected to be politely thrown out, not welcomed. "Thanks," I said, feeling awkward. "Your card?" "Of course," I said, and took my time getting it out of my shoulder bag. "Say, you don't have a step stool or something, do you? I'm having trouble seeing over the top." He surprised me by bringing a tall white leather bar stool. "Will this do?" "Sure," I said as I struggled to get up on it. I hate bar stools, but I finally managed to get comfortable, only now the counter was about 3 inches too low. Apparently, awkward was mandatory. "Oh, you mean this?" I said, putting my card down on the counter, tag and all. I thought the whole would get some kind of reaction. "I'm sorry, this card is no longer valid," or just, "What the hell did you do that for?" But he didn't bat an eye. I mean, he really didn't. He had kind of starry eyes. Although he didn't look weird or anything, he was quite attractive, actually, fairly tall with olive skin and some artful gold highlights in his short, dark hair. He reached over to take the card, but I didn't let go. "What are you going to do?" I asked him. "Pardon?" "I'd rather not let that out of my possession. I just need to check you in, and if necessary, update the provenance." Whatever that meant. "You give it right back." He nodded, and I let go, watching as he swiped it through something next to the keyboard on his desk. "Here you go," he said, handing it back to me. I made it disappear quickly in case he changed his mind. "Now what?" "You can go through," he said, tilting his head at a door to his right. "Go through to where?" Now he did bat an eye, both of them, in fact. "To your room." He looked at a screen I couldn't see. "Number 47. "That's my room." "That's what it says here." I don't know how I got the nerve. Cancer, probably. But I lunged forward, grabbed the flat monitor, and twisted it around so I could see the screen. I only saw my own picture before he grabbed it back and put it out of my reach. "Excuse me," he said a bit huffily. "How did you get my picture?" I demanded. Abruptly, the door to his right opened, and a tall woman with dark brown skin and a head full of short dreadlocks appeared. "You're early," she told me. It was like an accusation. "Who are you?" I asked, but even as soon as I did, I knew. "Stella," we said in unison. "Come along," she added, a bit sternly, and I obeyed. I had a hunch it would have been foolish not to. She took me down a carpeted hall to an old-fashioned brass open-cage elevator, which we rode down, getting off at -4. I followed her through a series of hallways until we came to a rich-looking door marked 47. "You're new, aren't you?" she said, although it wasn't a question. I'm glad somebody figured that out, I huffed. Is that guy at the desk a new hire? She sighed. His name is Nico, and without him, this place would fall apart. I resisted the urge to tell her that was some rather heavy credit for somebody who just swiped cards. Unless updating the provenance was code for saving the world. Instead, I decided to come clean. Look, I said, the truth is, that's not really my card. She raised a skeptical eyebrow at me and produced what looked like a smartphone from her blazer pocket. Well, let's just see whose it is then. She held out her hand, gave her the card. She touched it to the phone screen, waited a second, then gave it back to me. Yes, it is, she said, and showed me the screen. Not having an identity crisis, are you? I saw the same photo I'd seen on the receptionist's screen. It was a head and shoulders shot taken outdoors, but I couldn't tell where. The clothing was familiar, but I'd gotten rid of that shirt a long time ago, and I couldn't remember my hair being that long. But it was definitely me. Below the picture, in caps, was the legend, Cancer Dancer. What kind of sick joke is that? I said angrily. Stella rolled her eyes. Do you or do you not have cancer? Well, yes, but it's just a designation. You don't have to tell anybody what it is if you don't want to. At least it's easy to remember, and it might even help you with the process. What process? I said. Sidestep. It's always a step to the side, like this. She demonstrated by stepping from one side of the hall to the center. Then you go on as long as you want to. She took 3 steps forward. And when you come to a place where you want to sidestep, she stepped to the opposite side of the hallway. See? Easy. Sidestep till you find one of the lines where you're in remission. But don't bother trying to find one where you didn't get cancer in the first place. You're locked out of those. Light was starting to dawn. It shouldn't have, because this was nonsense, impossible, total woo-woo. Nonetheless, I was getting it. Just remember to look for a swipe, she said, pointing at the one next to the door. If it doesn't work, just move on. Oh, and don't be stupid and try to take someone with you. The Eternity Club has a strict no guests policy. The consequences are quite severe. Maybe it's not fair, but that's just how it is. Is that what happened to Michael Paris? I asked. I don't know anybody by that name, Stella said. I handed her the envelope. She examined it and looked at the papers inside. I couldn't say, but let's suppose for a moment that, let's say a woman decided she'd try to sidestep someone with her. Someone she'd grown very fond of, maybe a man with a heart condition, and she wanted to save him by taking him to a line where, say, he didn't die of a heart attack. And, I said, well, it would work. As a non-member, he wouldn't have a room. He'd die, and her card would be lost. And you know the rule about lost things. Finders keepers, she added when I shook my head. Congratulations. For some reason, her attitude toward me had softened. You know, except for the ones they know for certain are caused by things like smoking or asbestos, most cancers are just plain old bad luck. But every so often, some small compensatory action happens at random. You got lucky. Exercise care and good judgment, and don't break the rules, and you just might sidestep the end game for 2, even 3 decades. What if I were happy where I was, and I wanted to give my card to someone else, I asked. I was thinking of my son. It's not yours to give, it's ours. Read the terms and conditions. And if I didn't want to use it? Stella's expression was pitying. You could give it back, but I'd suggest not doing anything rash. Hang on to it for a while in case you change your mind. But please, she said wearily, I've told you as much as I can, but I can't spare any more time. I'm trying to quit this damn job, and if I don't get going, I might be stuck here forever. She strode off down the hall and around a corner before I could even say but again. I looked at the door, at the swipe, at the card in my hand. Everything that woman had just told me was complete and utter nonsense, I thought, so it wouldn't matter if I used the card. So I did it, quick, before I changed my mind. There was a clunking sound as the lock opened. I pushed through, and there I was in the reception area again, looking at what's-his-name, Nico. I whirled, thinking I could catch the door and go back through. Nope, it was the front door from the outside, not room 47. "Oh," Nico said, same brief look of surprise, quickly covered with a smile. "Welcome to the Eternity Club." Wouldn't you just fucking know it, I thought. I'd stepped from the frying pan into one of those lifetimes, and I still had cancer. And then suddenly I understood why Stella was so annoyed with me. What kind of help poor Karen, whoever she was, had really been asking Detective Sergeant Michael Paris Reddit for, and why I probably couldn't expect any either. And that didn't make any more sense than the other one, right? I'll stop now, I promise. So now what do you want to do?
Pick my jaw off the floor.
Aw, you're just saying that to be sweet. I love it when, guys like this come to my readings and they're nice. You're spoiling me rotten though. I'm gonna want you at every reading.
So what are you writing?
I am writing a novel that takes off from my Hugo novelette, the girl thing that went out for sushi, and it's set about 800 years in the future, and it has bipeds and sushi in it. Because when I was writing the story, Jonathan Strain had asked me for a story, and he said it has to be set in the future, in the solar system, and you can't cheat with faster than light travel or anything like that. It's got to be like real science. And so I thought, well, why don't I make this harder for myself and write a story set in outer space? Because I'd never done that before. Well, I never had. And I just sort of wrote my way into the story. And I was thinking about the different things, it's like to make the story really story-ish. And I was thinking, okay, we've got to use real science. So rather than terraform planets, which is like expensive and takes forever, I thought, what if people adapted their forms to live in a weightless environment? It's like labor-saving devices, plus you can use epigenetics to pass on the acquired characteristics. So I thought that would really save a lot of money, and everybody likes to fly. It's like you can live in a place where you can fly all the time. So then I was thinking, well, what would be the best form for people who live weightlessly, and yet would have to probably withstand a lot of G-forces and acceleration when they travel. I thought, well, octopuses live weightless and yet under a great amount of pressure since they're, way down in the ocean. And so I thought, well, would people do, and I thought, yeah, absolutely they would. Because if, it's like when you get to traveling to Jupiter, after that, it's so expensive to come back, you might as well not. I thought, it's like, wow, if you could feel that good all the time, and your standard of beauty, it's like you wouldn't be on Earth anymore, and your standard of beauty wouldn't be the standard of beauty on Earth under gravity. And I was thinking about how bipeds, it's like on gravity, your face grows out and down, but in zero G, it would just grow out. And so I've got a lot of extra flexible, pumpkin-headed spaghetti people who decide to stay bipeds versus those who decide to go out for sushi. And when I was writing the story, I was in the middle of it and dealing with a biped, an unadapted biped, who decides that she's going out for sushi. And she retains a lawyer to help her with all the legal problems of, it's like family and businesses and friends and your bank and the government and everything. And I was in the middle of writing all this, and I realized that I was drawing on a lot of things that my trans friends had told me about the difficulties they faced in transitioning. And particularly Roz Caveney. I've known her forever. And she's told me, many things about herself and about, our mutual friends. And I happen to know other trans people even besides Roz Caveney. Although I'm convinced that actually everybody in the world, sooner or later, will know Roz Caveney because she knows everybody. She probably knows you, and you don't even know it. But, and I thought, I'm writing like a little trans allegory. And so, so I figured that it would be sort of like all my other stories, it's like, I dance like nobody's watching. Or like I hope nobody's watching. And I was really surprised when it got nominated for a Hugo. And so when you join the Worldcon and you can vote for the Hugo, what happens is they provide you special copies of all the nominated work so that you can read them. And David Brin, a very conscientious scientist and science fiction writer, read all of the nominated works. And he said, in the novelette category, Pat Cadigan's Girl Thing Who Went Out for Sushi is so optimistic. And it's like it looks forward to the future and it uses science in a most positive way, and I really love it. And I mean, it was a totally unexpected promotion. And I won the Hugo, and I think I owe it to David. And I heard from Greg Benford as well, about it's like it was good science, and I thought, well, how about that? I wrote a trans allegory that all the old white guys like because it's so positive about science. You can please everybody. That's my favorite thing to say about that story. So now I'm working on the novel, and I've been working on the novel and working on the novel. And I started working on the novel, and then my mother passed away. And my mother was, she was quite high maintenance, and we had to take such care of her all the time that for a while I stopped working on novels completely, and I just wrote short stories or pieces of short fiction, because those were the ones that I could get done in between phone calls. And my mother was a heroic, and really magnificent woman in so many ways, but she was extremely difficult. And I understand exactly why. No one else would really understand, It's like, my mother got like she got the bad breaks probably of people who got all lucky all the time, She had a lot of bad luck. And I was her only child, and, it's like there were 3 people left in the family, me, her, and my son. Now there's me and my son. And I needed to take care of her, and we needed to take care of her. And she was very frightened in the last part of her life because no one in our family had ever been that old. My mother died at 92, and no one in our family made it past 70. Most people in our family didn't get to 70. And she'd say, what if I die? I'd say, Mom, if you die, your troubles are over. And she'd say, that's very bad taste. And I said, well, consider the source, where I learned it from. When her sister Loretta died, who was one of my mothers, I was raised by 3 women, and I call them all Mom interchangeably. I'll try and make this as fast as possible.
No.
When we left my very violent and awful father, we went to live with my Aunt Loretta and her business partner. That's what they called it in the late 50s. And I just started calling all 3 of them Mom. And for a while, Dolly would say, you do know who I am, don't you? And I'd say, yeah. And she was the one actually that I wanted to be like the most. And she was what most people would uncharitably call maybe a diesel dyke. She was, it's like there was no mistake. Everyone, except me, I didn't get it until I went away to college. And then I was like, oh, huh. How about that? And people said to me afterwards, well, didn't they try and make you like them? I said, what do you mean, like them? I did like them. But no, didn't they try to make you hate men? And, it's like, I knew, even before I realized, what the situation was, I knew that they didn't live that way because they hated men. All of them had brothers, and they loved their brothers. And I loved my uncles. It's like I had very positive male role models with both Diane's family and my own. They lived the way they lived because it was the way they wanted to live. And what they taught me was to live the way I want to live and not apologize for it to anybody, or make excuses for it, or to say, well, I hate men. Unless, of course, I wanted the guy to leave. So, now, that wasn't even an answer to a question, was it? Yeah, I warned you. Yeah, I should just sit up here and talk until forcibly removed.
Well, that raises an interesting question. Because the political stories have really significant jumps, real zigzags in plot. And that's also seems to be the way you think.
Yep. He's out on me.
So do you have any other insights or any other comments about the way you plot?
Well, every morning I get up and I say to myself, what are we doing today, Zool? And I was on a panel about, adapting to the future and coping with the future. And it's like, what adapt? What cope? You do it, It's like the day starts and you get up and whatever it's out there, it's like you deal with it, or you lie down on the ground and people will walk over you. But when I started the University of Massachusetts, I went there for a while because I was a theater major. But I took a course in logic because I thought it would help me, and I made my teaching assistant cry. Actually, I don't think I made him cry. I think he was having like one of those lifetimes, and he was having a really bad time. But the last thing he said to me was something like, you don't actually have any thought processes. You're clairvoyant. You just look into the future and do what's coming next. And I said, well, that's as good as an explanation as anything. And I could see that he was crying, so I left because men didn't like that. In 1970, men did not want you to see them cry. So, and or in Amherst. So, yeah, I failed logic. Actually, the way I look at it, logic failed me. But at least I got a D in ethics. I passed, Hey, you know what they call the person who graduates last in their class from med school?
Doctor.
That's right. So, it was like, I'm ethical. I have the certificate to prove it.
I understand there's an opening in Washington, D.C. for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are lots of openings. It looks like Swiss cheese over there. So what else can I help you with?
You made a comment just when you started talking about how people spend their time, and you described it as some people travel without a destination.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase just caught me as being so real. And I think it's because of my age and my physical condition that I've looked at let's say, time now in that way.
Mhm.
And I just wondered if that's, for me, it's something that just came with age.
Mhm.
And you're much younger than I am. But just how did you arrive at that?
Well, that, actually that wasn't what I was thinking of specifically. I was still working outside the home, and I used to work at Hallmark Cards. And yes, I did used to write the cards. I can write iambic pentameter if I want to. I still don't want to. But I was working at Hallmark, and the whole thing was, it's called, they actually have a word for people who work at card companies. It's called the social expression industry. Yeah. The idea of the social expression industry was you send a card to make everything all right. You care enough to send the very best. And you do it every day. And you move forward in time, but you actually don't move, It's status quo, always. And it was an interesting company. I worked there for 5 years before the founder, J.C. Hall, died, and for 5 years after he had passed away. And it was a very different company. In fact, it was practically an overnight change. J.C. Hall had felt that all his employees were in his extended family. And it was not that he would come to your house and eat all your food or anything, but it was like every holiday, we would all line up and we would go shake hands with Mr. Hall. And I'd met Mr. Hall when I was still working in the retail area of Hallmark. And I introduced myself, said what a privilege it was to see him, and then about a year later, I was working in editorial, and I was late getting into work. And when you're late to work, the person that you're going to meet is, either your boss, your boss's boss, or the founder of the company. But I thought, yeah. And I got on, we were the only two people on the elevator. And I got on and I said, hello, Mr. Hall. And he, of course, everyone knew who Mr. Hall was. And he turned to me and he said, so you're working over here in the big building with us, Pat. And I thought, yep, the only people that you meet when you're late to work are the people who remember your name. But I understood how he had gone from, living in the Y and selling postcards from a box under his bed to Hallmark cards. And in that time, up until 1982 when he died, Hallmark had never laid anyone off, even during the Great Depression. When, if people developed a substance abuse problem, Hallmark sent them to dry out. It was usually something requiring drying out, and rehabilitated you and then plugged you back into your job. And when you had a baby, you got a baby gift. If you got married, you got a married gift. And it was all very much like that. And then Mr. Hall passed away in 1982. And it was like the signal for the go-go, bean counter, coke snorting 80s. The bean counters took over. Our head of the creative division got very huffy about the coke snorting bean counters taking over, and he quit. And he left us all there. So we lost our advocate, and we became like things. We became like employees. And Mr. Hall had felt that artists and writers, and they employed a lot more artists and writers, were extremely important, and you should try and make them happy within a certain amount of reason. But if you had a very brilliant artist or writer who was, rather eccentric, you went with that because, you know, it's like you would benefit from that. And I worked with a writer who was extremely eccentric, and they just kept her happy. And she was worth it, you know? It's like she did the job better than all of us combined. Crazy as a bedbug, but man, could she write verse, you know? And but then the go-go 80s came in, and the coke snorting bean counters, and I remember they'd moved us out of the main building and into an office building where we had to work while they were rehabilitating the inside, or redecorating, whatever it was they were doing. And it was a room with fluorescent lights, and there was only one way out of the room. Only, you know, one way in, one way out, and it was cubicles. And, you know, it's like you'd go in, and as soon as you stepped in to the room, you'd lose the will to live. And that was okay, because there's only one way out of the room anyway. And I began to take my dissatisfaction about this out on my department. And I complained that there was only one way out of the room, and if there was a fire, we were trapped. And my supervisor, not my boss, but the supervisor said, oh, you know, these walls, these are not real walls. We could pound through those, you know, easily. We wouldn't burn to death. And I said, most people don't burn to death, you idiot. They die of smoke inhalation. We'll die of smoke inhalation before we could. Anyway, to shut Pat up, they got a little tiny fire extinguisher, and they put it by the door. Now, coincidentally at this time, Hallmark had acquired a jewelry company, and they asked us to name it. This was part of our job, writing cards and naming new product lines and things like that. So they gave us a brochure of the jewelry that we all came up with these, you know, exquisite names. You would have thought the crown jewels, you know, rare gems, you know, incredible metals. And then they decided to call the company, the line of jewelry, Just For You. Now, this isn't quite as funny because you don't know that the boss who made this decision was someone whose pet peeve was when we would design, you know, the gift wrap, and the little gift card would say Just For You on it, and he'd rip it up and he'd say, total lack of imagination, think of something else. He hated Just For You. The only thing he hated more than Just For You was For You, or a gift. So when the little tiny fire extinguisher arrived, we were all sulking about Just For You. And then we got a memo, and it said, we're pretty committed to Just For You. But on the off chance that there's a perfect name out there that no one has come up with yet, could you try and think of some more names? I don't think they could turn any of them in that we... But then they also sent around a memo, you know, another dig at Pat, the big fuss budget, saying a fire extinguisher is now, you know, and one of my co-workers attached another note to it saying, please try and think of 5 or 6 names for the new extinguisher on Friday. And the winning name was Just For Fires. And I thought to myself, the really horrible thing is that they absolutely have no idea how incredibly intelligent and witty we are. You know, it's like, this is so completely wasted on them. Traveling without destination. So that means you want me to leave now, right?
No.
Sign. Oh, I gotta sign something. I gotta sign something. Yeah, there aren't any novels, but there are lots of what are those, with the paper in them. Oh, you got a novel, okay. Okay, well, here they don't have any novels, but
Yeah.
they're books, they're anthologies, and there are lots of stories, so if you don't like the one that I have in it, you can read some of the others, and maybe you like those. And, well, yeah, an octopus, imagine that. So I guess I'll let you flee if you want to flee, or I'll sign if you want me to sign, or I'll sign and then you can flee. You know, it's your choice. We have these freedoms. Be glad we might not have them much longer. Well, yeah. Yeah, I insist on it. All I have to do is have the tip. I wonder if I'll ever get that sideways groove back.
So I left the register open over there, if you guys need to buy something now,
Standing
okay?
above us all, so
The cashier, I left one of the cash registers open, we don't need to buy a bunch.
Is there a designated for please?
Yes. Are you trying to escape?
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, David.
Of course,
Oh my gosh.
You can take 5 or 6 photos.
Yeah, so, hi. Yeah. I'm part of the Canarian 2017 crowd. Yeah.
Brief additional announcement, if anyone would still like to purchase a book, Dwayne has a cashier. Open the main cashier sign.
Okay, we're gonna need the hammer and why don't you guys come around here? Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, we're taking a picture.